Hi, I'm Dr. Matt B, and these are your emotional minutes. And welcome back. And today I'm actually out in front of a fire station where a lot of really good first responders do great and really important work. And these individuals really see people through some of the worst events in their lives, and they can actually experience very traumatic events themselves through their line of duty. Now, traumatic events can really be incredibly scary and difficult to experience. Some people who experience such events can be fearful or uneasy for a number of weeks or even over a month or so. Others may actually go on to experience more long-term emotional effects, and about 18% of people experience post-traumatic stress disorder, and that's something that we've talked about here on Emotional Minutes before, and I'll leave a link for that in the post if you're more interested in post-traumatic stress. When something bad or traumatic happens, many people really want to rush to help. So for instance, after school shootings, therapists will sort of flock to the school to provide emotional aid to the children who experience the shooting. Or sometimes you may just want to help a friend or a family member who's experienced something traumatic. And really that desire to help is really a sign of humanity's best, humanity's nobility, if you will. But the way in which we help has actually been found to be really important and to really influence outcomes or emotional outcomes in the long term. So a lot of people believe that the best way to help a friend or a family member in need or somebody who's experienced a traumatic event is to really have them immediately talk about it and sort of process it in a constructive way. And this method has actually been set into kind of a structured intervention that is sometimes used immediately after a traumatic event called psychological debriefing or critical incident stress debriefing. This method really involves having victims of a traumatic event sort of talk about the event and what it means for them immediately after the event, whether in a one-on-one or a group format. But research has actually found that this method, or sort of really trying to get people or even pressure people to talk about the event, actually doesn't help people in the long run and may actually be counterproductive to how people do psychologically in the long run, because it may interfere with somebody's natural ability to cope, which may actually be pretty effective. What has been shown to work actually immediately after a traumatic event is what we call psychological first aid. And really what this approach does is it really provides education to people about sort of normal reactions and other coping resources that they might be able to access. And it really promotes engagement with positive support resources a person may have. So just sort of letting people know what they might experience, and if they do experience certain things, then really connecting them with those social support resources and those coping resources that they may be able to use if down the line, 4 to 6 weeks later, for example, they do continue to experience traumatic stress symptoms. So if you've experienced a traumatic event recently, one of the best things to do is really to stay engaged in your routines. It can also help to purposefully engage in activities that really you find meaningful and give you purpose. And it can also really be a normal experience to have the urge to try to avoid things that might remind you of the event. For example, avoiding the location that a car accident took place in. But it's usually pretty helpful to still really encounter those things if you can, even despite that urge, and even if it feels kind of weird in doing so. If you know someone who's experienced a traumatic event recently, it's really important to not tell them how they should cope or really try to pressure them to talk about it. Telling them certain ways that they should cope can actually really interfere with their natural abilities to cope. The best way to support them is really to acknowledge that something happened and let them know that you're there for them no matter what and whenever they might want to talk about it, and then sort of giving them the space and the chance to sort of approach you if they feel that they need to do that. And another thing you can do is actually sort of lightly and gently encourage them to sort of join you for social events, along the lines of things you might normally do, and then, giving them the space to accept whether or not they want to take those invitations. So hopefully that was helpful today in talking about immediate responses to events that might feel traumatic. And if you find yourself having a lot of distressing memories of an event you might have experienced, nightmares, and or giving in to those urges to try to avoid events, and it's been about 4 to 6 weeks after the event occurred, I always recommend contacting a mental health provider. And again, I'm Dr. Matt B, and these are your Emotional Minutes, and we'll see you next time.